Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on wherever you are today. My name is Rizwan, and today we're going to be talking about how do you generate excitement among your stakeholders by telling compelling stories. A brief about me. I currently work as a senior product manager at Wayfair. Wayfair is an online retailer based out of North America and Europe, and I work to help our partners sell everything related to home goods online. Before Wayfair, I was working in a company called Jumia, which is also an e-commerce company, but based out of Africa, more like an Alibaba, but for Africa. Over there, I was heading products related to logistics, which helped our operators deliver on time. Before that, I was a business stakeholder. So I was building the last mile delivery infrastructure at Daraz, which is more like a South Asia's Alibaba. In general, I've made two career transitions in my life. I studied finance, started in private equity, didn't enjoy it. Fortunately, moved to logistics at Daraz, worked there for 4 years, and then found my home in product management. And I've been there since the last 4 years, and I love it. A quote that describes product manager really well, a bit glorified explanation, but let's go with it. A great product manager has a brain of an engineer, the heart of a designer, and the speech of a diplomat. Today, we're going to be focusing on the speech of a diplomat piece. Broadly speaking, we'll be talking about four different topics today. First one, what is the right structure and mix for a story? As a product manager, I love putting things into a box and then focusing on the content of that box. So once we get that structure out of the way, we're going to talk about at what stage in your career does this skill become a must have instead of a nice to have. Then I'm going to be sharing a couple of experiences with you all, which help me develop the guiding principles that I still to date use whenever I'm forming a story. And then lastly, I'm going to be leaving you with 3 steps that you can take immediately after this workshop to sharpen your storytelling skills. So let's start off with the story. There was a guy named John in the 17th century, popularly known as the fourth Earl of Sandwich. He loved playing cards. Basically, he was a gambler. He used to play 16 hours a day non-stop. One of the problems that he had is for supper or to eat, he had to leave the table and go out. What he wanted to do was essentially use one hand to eat, the other to play the cards. He came up with an idea that why not use 2 slices of bread, put a beef in it, and then hold that in one hand while he plays, and then the other hand can be used to play cards. That led to what we call today as sandwich. Now, in all likelihood, you will not forget this story. Why? Because while hearing this story resulted in your brain releasing a dopamine, which helps with memory and accuracy. If this was a bullet point presentation, it would have been easier to forget because your brain would not register it. It would only decode the meaning of those bullet points, but it would not help with memory. Now, what is the structure that the story has followed that makes it so compelling? It's quite simple. It's a 3S process: setup, struggle, solution. The setup helps build the context about your character, about the situation that the character is in. The struggle focuses on the problems, the constraints, the day-to-day challenges that your character faces. The solution is your product, your idea or your strategy that's going to help your character remove the constraint, remove the struggle from his life or her life. Now that we know that the structure actually works, it is important to understand that what is the right mix for this structure to work. Should I focus on the solution? Should I focus on the setup more? Should I focus on the struggle more? There is an answer to it. They say that struggle engages the audience, not the solution. And you would notice this in the day to day communications that you do, or the day to day communications that you have with your stakeholder, where you constantly focus on the solution, the end product, not the struggle. A strong story would have some part in the setup. So clarify the context, make sure that your audience understands the whole situation of your character. Who is your character? The struggle should be so evident that the audience can relate to the character. Talk about the jobs that your character is doing, talk about the day to day struggles of your character, and then keep a small portion of your speech on the solution. If your struggle is clear, if the problems that you have identified are clear and relatable, the solution is just a byproduct of it. It's easier to understand the solution if the problem is clear. I believe that a weak story is also a result of the exposure that you have in your career. At what stage of the career that you're currently in will derive the stories that you tell in the future. Let's look at that. Now, this is a graph based on a personal experience, so it is not industry standard. But broadly speaking, a product manager would evolve in their career based on this level of ownership. In the beginning, when you're, let's say, an associate product manager or a junior product manager or even a product manager, someone else, your manager, would be defining the problems and the solutions for it. And you will be tasked to basically deliver that solution. So follow up with your developers, follow up with the designers, make sure the deadlines are met, etc., etc. As you grow in your career, you will then have ownership of solutions. So someone's going to say, okay, these are the 5 problems or 4 problems that we want to solve in this quarter or in this year. And please work with your engineering team and your designers and your researchers to solve these problems. As you move up the career, the ownership is going to evolve to problems, to strategy, and to vision. The more you go up, the higher it becomes important to tell a compelling story. Because if you cannot engage the audience, if you cannot make the audience or your followers believe in the story, or it make it easier to understand for a wider audience to relate to that story, the harder it will get for you to get the job done. So, based on my experiences, I think the right time to start focusing on the skill and actively reflecting on this skill is when you have sort of mastered how to present or how to make solutions. Either you have started to work a lot with your senior stakeholders who do not necessarily want to talk about tactical details on how the solution is going to be implemented, but more focusing on the problem statements or the opportunity size or the addressable market that you want to pursue. Also, if you started leading discussions related to prioritization, that is when it becomes more and more important to tell compelling stories. Great. So now that we have essentially identified the structure that you should follow, the mix that you should follow, and what stage in your career influences the amount of stories or the type of stories that you tell, let's start now with the guiding principles that have helped me over the course of my career get better at storytelling. I'm still a student. I still learn every day from my peers, from my mentors, from my managers. But some of these two guiding principles that I'll talk about will help you a lot when thinking about the stories that you tell. So I'll start off with an example, and this guiding principle essentially helped me decode the situation better. So the principle is the pain of the status quo needs to be greater than the pain of change. So whenever you are forming a story in your head, ask yourself the struggle that you are portraying and the solution that you are presenting. Is the struggle of the current status quo, the pain of the current status quo, more than the pain of the change that you're proposing? Let's look at this example. In my introduction, I spoke about my time at Jumia. So I spent 3 years in this company called Jumia, which is an Alibaba-like e-commerce, but focused on the African market. I spent 3 years there. And back in 2017, they opened their marketplace up to international sellers. So before 2017, if you wanted to sell, let's say, if you are a customer in Nigeria, you can only buy goods from a Nigerian seller. But after 2017, let's say as a customer in Nigeria, I am able to shop from, let's say, sellers in Europe, sellers in China, etc. One of the problems when we started scaling this business model was the product for each country, there was a specific seller portal. Now, this means is at that time, Jumia opened up to 12 countries, which means I, as a seller, have to use 12 different seller portals based on the number of countries I want to sell in, which means I have to create products in 12 different portals, process orders in 12 different portals, see dashboards and basically process payments, currency, everything, but in individual portals, not a unified view. So I, as a product manager, made a case to essentially invest in a product to unify that experience. I followed the story structure, very clearly defined setup, very clearly defined the struggle, very clearly defined the story. Sorry for that. So as I said, I clearly followed the story structure, but the result of my speech or my pitch to the stakeholders for this project did not get approved in 2017. So, what did we learn, or what did I learn out of this experience that helped me get better at it? I used this guiding principle. Now, think about your product and see if this product is a painkiller or is it a vitamin. It's a very popular analogy used for defining products. For a painkiller, it is normal, it is human behavior for us to run away from pain rather than move towards the reward. So if you position your product or position your story as a pain that is resolved through your product, it has a higher relatability. It is higher. There's a higher chance that your stakeholders will essentially buy in on your product. Now, there are two approaches that I used when you think about this guiding principle. First, what you could do is you can think of 5 painful realities that your customers will face if they don't use your product. You can also think about 5 painful realities that your stakeholders could experience if they don't own your product. Essentially, this concept popularly is known as the cost of doing nothing. I used this to get buy-in for this project later on. What happened was e-commerce businesses run on sales events. So an event like Black Friday can move your sales 5x or 10x depending on the scale of the business that you are in. What happened in 2017 was we had a Black Friday and all the small teething problems that we had became big unmanageable problems. So the reality, the future, the painful future that I failed to show up at that time became evident in the story. And that made it possible for me to get this buy-in from our stakeholders. The second was what is the cost? What is the price or what is the value that we save if we don't implement your solution? This is the second approach. So think about it as assume that you have to build this product, right? There is an implementation cost, there is a behavior change cost, there's a training cost, all of it. So your stakeholders, when they think about the product, they're also thinking about what is the cost of this change that we're trying to introduce to our customers or to our users at large. And this specific model in your head can help you clarify the struggle really well and help your stakeholders make this decision. Hey, the current status quo is bad. We understand the solution can get to a better state, but there is also an element of what is the cost of moving to that changed behavior. You need to make it clear in your story. And this becomes a part of the struggle behavior as we speak. So just to summarize here, think about your product's positioning. Whether it is a painkiller, your stakeholders will go leaps and bounds to resolve that pain and give you a buy-in and basically stay with you. Or is it a vitamin? So small hiccups in your project can lead to them backing out, and they may not stick around if things start getting tough. Let's move on to the second guiding principle now that we have basically talked about the first. I'll walk again through another example. So, continuing on this Jumia example where I pitched a solution, it got not approved. Then, 6 months later, using the first guiding principle, it essentially got approved later. Now that the project is approved, we are essentially investigating. We did the whole plan, we presented the MVP, and now we realized that because of resource and constraints, the MVP is delayed. Now, as a product manager, I have to help the management take a decision of go or no go. This is where the second guiding principle helped me. We essentially got a go ahead on this specific situation, but it was predominantly because the why of the project was very clear. I love this quote where it says, people don't want to buy a quarter-inch drill, they want to buy a quarter-inch hole. It again focuses on the struggle piece of the story. So think about when you're doing a speech, when you're doing a presentation, or when you're talking to your stakeholders, are you explaining the benefits of the quarter-inch drill instead of focusing on the user problem at large? There are two ways you can approach this situation. If you focus on the in the early stages of your product life cycle, it becomes more and more important to have the why very clear. You need to be sure your stakeholders need to be aligned on the why, because during the course of finding the product market fit, in the early stages of the product, there will be tons of situations where things will not go the way that you were hoping for. And you do not want your stakeholders to jump the ship. It's like, oh, this is getting too difficult, let's not do it, etc., etc. I know we have all had these conversations, but what helped me solve that scenario was we went back to the why. We did not focusing on, oh, there is a small glitch here and small glitch there, and it's going to be solved later, etc., etc. But we focused on the why, and that helped keep that long-term investment in check. Because during the course of that product development cycle, there were multiple times that this situation happened. And each time, what kept us going was the clarity of why, okay, we need to scale, and this is why this product is more important. It is important for us to deliver a supreme supplier experience to our users in order to scale the product, in order to scale our business. The second piece that helped with that scenario was do not focus on the customers in your speech, but focus on the job that they want to accomplish. It's a very interesting framework on jobs to be done. I use that a lot in my products presentations or product demos, where we focus on what is the job that the customer actually wants your product to do, not on what is the type of customer. Let's take another example here. Google's mission is to make information accessible to everyone, not to make information accessible for people who can speak or write English. So don't focus on the customer in your story. Focus on the job that the customer has to do. That has worked out really well in my case in making sure that we are essentially solving for the customer pains and not just customer himself. So now that we have spoken about structure of the story, how does your career exposure influences the type of stories that you tell, and also two of the guiding principles that helped me solve scenarios. Let's now talk about what are the immediate steps that you can take to become a better storyteller. These are personal experiences. I have tried it. I have tried this, and I continue to try it in my day-to-day life. In my 4 years of product management, I have transitioned from a junior product manager to a senior product manager. And a lot of it was by focusing on storytelling skills and essentially developing empathy. So I would highly recommend you to take at least a month from your current role and spend that time in a business development or a customer service role. I know it's not easy, it takes up a lot of time and buy-in to get to that state, but unless you live the life of a business development person or a customer service person who's talking to your clients, who's talking to your users day in, day out, the stories that they tell, you would not be able to develop the empathy that is needed to tell a powerful story. I have tried just listening to like customer calls or doing user interviews. Trust me, the ROI, the return on investment that you get by just working for a month with these people, it is unparalleled to anything that you can imagine. The second thing that I would highly recommend is spend time with people who have been in the consulting business, a sales role, or an agency role. These guys, these people essentially tell stories day in, day out. They know what clicks for the other person. They know how to read the audience. They know how to tell stories that just do not focus. Like, it's not a short term thing that they're doing. It's a long term thing. How to present. All of these characteristics are ingrained in the role that they are in. So spend time with these people and essentially ask them for feedback on how would they approach a particular scenario or a presentation if they were in your place. The third thing is you may not relate to it, but one of my managers asked me that basically if your family is not convinced about a particular idea of yours, it is quite hard that your stakeholders will agree to it. So he proposed that I should write letters to my loved ones, explaining them about my life and getting feedback on what they think. What is it that clicked for them in the letter that I wrote? It's essentially the first step of progress if you can get them to buy in because they're emotionally invested in your success. So with this, I'm going to be concluding my call. I'm going to be concluding my presentation with you. Let's summarize what we have learned so far. So first, this structure: setup, struggle, solution. Use this to form stories in your mind. Think about, what should I put in the setup? What should I put in the struggle? What should I put in the solution? Start reflecting on your communication style early in your careers. Talk to your managers in your next development discussion or your one-to-one. Ask them, what is this, at what ownership level are they inside the product? Are you only doing delivery? Are you only doing solution? Or are you thinking about the problem and strategy and the vision of the product as well? Depending on the exposure that you have, this skill becomes a must-have, and you should start actively learning about it from your peers, from different steps that we spoke about. Keep the purpose of your offering, the why of your offering, at the center, at the heart of every story that you tell. These whys help you explain the struggle well, and so as the pain of the status quo. So aggravate that, make it undesirable to stay in the current status quo, and keep that as the heart of your story. Lastly, learn and seek feedback from people who tell stories day in, day out. You are fortunate if you have people around who can tell great stories and you can learn from them. If not, you can start off by your own with your family. They are very straightforward feedback providers from my experience. I'm going to leave you with my contact details on how you can reach and why, in which cases would it be nice to reach me. So if you search for Rizwan Rafiq on LinkedIn or Rizwan Rafiq or Rizwan Wayfair on LinkedIn, I'm the only Rizwan at Wayfair, so it's going to be easier for you to find me there. If you want this pitch deck, I'd be happy to send it to you. Please email me on this email address with just product drive and your name. So for example, product drive and Rizwan, and I'd be happy to reply with this pitch deck. The third thing is, if you want to talk about, let's say, your career in product management, or if you want to upskill yourself in product management, I'll be happy to provide some consultation. please reach out to me on LinkedIn or email, whatever interests you. And lastly, Wayfair is always hiring, is always looking for great talent. So go to this like link Wayfair/careers and write to me about a role that you're interested in. I'd be happy to help find you a good fit here. Thanks a lot. Please take good care of yourself in these troubling times, and I look forward to hearing from all of you. Take care. Bye bye.